Aaliyah Johnson had always prided herself on being strong. A devoted mother, a loving wife, and someone who carried her world with grace. Yet, nothing could have prepared her for the words that ripped through her life that morning. Her husband, in a fit of bitterness, had declared her ugly after kids, and shoved her belongings into boxes. The echo of his cruel laughter still haunted her ears as she stood outside their apartment, her children clutching her hands, wide-eyed and scared. The world seemed unusually cold that day. The sun's warmth did little to thaw the ache in her chest. Aaliyah felt invisible, stripped of the identity she had once taken pride in. Every glance at her reflection reminded her of his words, each mirror a cruel critic reinforcing the narrative she was trying desperately to deny. But she swallowed her tears, held her chin high, and led her children down the bustling street, pretending she was unshaken. As the trio walked through the city park, Aaliyah's children laughed softly, trying to bring joy into a world that had suddenly lost its color. Their innocence was a reminder that, despite everything, life still carried moments worth holding on to. She forced a smile for them, but the pain behind her eyes betrayed her. It was then that Jinsoo Kim appeared. He was walking his dog along the same path, his presence calm, composed, and unassuming. Jinsoo noticed Aaliyah immediately, not because she was striking though she was, but because of the weight she carried in her posture, the quiet sorrow she tried to hide. Without hesitation, he approached carefully, mindful of the children, and offered a gentle, respectful smile. "Are you okay?" he asked softly, not intrusive but filled with genuine concern. Aaliyah hesitated, unsure what to say. She was unused to strangers showing empathy without an ulterior motive. But something in Jinsoo's voice made her pause. He didn't judge, he didn't question. He simply acknowledged her pain. "I'm fine," she said, her voice cracking despite her effort. He didn't press further. Instead, he offered a simple gesture, a light, comforting hug. In that embrace, fleeting as it was, Aaliyah felt a flicker of warmth she hadn't felt in months. It wasn't romantic, it was human. It was recognition that she mattered, that her suffering was seen, even if just for a moment. Her children watched curiously, and Jinsoo gave them a reassuring nod, making the moment feel safe and unthreatening. As they parted, Jinsoo simply smiled. "Sometimes life throws things at us that don't define who we are. Remember that," he said before continuing on his way. Aaliyah stood frozen for a moment, the words sinking in. She watched him disappear into the distance, and something inside her shifted. Perhaps this was the beginning, not of a fairy tale, not yet, but of a path where she might see herself differently. Perhaps, just perhaps, someone could look past her pain and see her worth. With a deep breath, she held her children closer. The day was far from over, and the challenges ahead were many, but for the first time since her heartbreak, Aaliyah felt a whisper of hope. She wasn't invisible. She wasn't broken. And maybe, just maybe, life had someone unexpected waiting to remind her of that. The days following her husband's departure felt endless to Aaliyah. Mornings were the hardest. Waking up to the quiet absence of someone who had once shared every corner of her life left a hollow ache in her chest. Yet, amidst the struggle of keeping her children fed, dressed, and comforted, there was a strange anticipation in the back of her mind. She couldn't explain it, but her encounter in the park with Jinsoo Kim lingered like a faint light in a room otherwise draped in shadows. That morning, Aaliyah had barely set foot outside her apartment when she noticed a small bouquet of flowers leaning against her door. A soft note was tucked neatly beneath the blooms. Her hands trembled slightly as she unfolded it, expecting some mistake, or perhaps another cruel comment from her ex-husband. "You are more than what they say. Never forget your worth, Jay." Her heart skipped a beat. Who was this Jay? Her eyes scanned the street, half expecting to see someone watching her, but there was no one. She turned the flowers in her hands, inhaling the delicate scent. The gesture was simple, yet it carried a weight of kindness she hadn't experienced in months. When she entered the apartment, her children rushed over, curious about the unexpected gift. "Who sent this, Mama?" her daughter asked, her small hands brushing the petals gently. Aaliyah smiled softly, unsure what to say. "Someone who sees me, for who I am," she murmured. Even as she spoke, she felt a surge of courage. Perhaps life could hold gentleness even amidst chaos. Later that afternoon she saw him again. Jinsoo, calm and composed as ever, was seated on a bench in the park, seemingly waiting. Her heart raced, but this time she approached with purpose rather than fear. He stood as she neared, offering his usual polite smile. "I wasn't sure if you received the flowers," he said, his voice low and soothing. "I just wanted you to know someone notices your strength." Aaliyah blinked, emotions swirling. Gratitude, surprise, even a hint of embarrassment. "Thank you, really," she said softly, her voice steadier than she had expected. "It means a lot, more than I can explain." He nodded, as though he understood more than the words could express. "No one should feel invisible, especially not a mother like you. Your kids are lucky to have you." Her chest tightened. She had been struggling to see herself through anything but her ex-husband's cruel lens. And yet here was a man, a stranger, offering perspective she desperately needed. The conversation was brief, but its impact was undeniable. As they prepared to part ways, Jinsoo stepped closer and offered a simple gesture. A hug. Just a hug. No strings attached, no expectation. Aaliyah felt her heart relax into it, a moment of calm in the storm of her life. It was a reminder that human connection could be gentle, patient, and healing. When she returned home, her children clustered around her, curious about the smile that lingered on her face. For the first time in days, Aaliyah realized she could breathe without the weight of judgment pressing down. Someone had seen her not as ugly after kids, not as discarded or broken, but as worthy of respect and kindness. And perhaps that small, unexpected kindness was the first thread of hope that could lead her out of despair. The morning air was crisp as Aaliyah guided her children toward the school bus. It was the kind of day that reminded her how ordinary life could feel almost unbearable when weighed down by pain. Yet, in the back of her mind, the memory of Jinsoo Kim's small acts of kindness, the flowers, the note, the comforting hug, was like a faint warmth she couldn't ignore. She tried to brush it off as coincidence, but deep down she felt a strange sense of relief knowing someone saw her beyond her struggles. Later that week, life tested her resolve. Her son Malik had left a crucial school project at home, and panic set in when she realized she didn't have time to help him redo it. Her stress mounted as she juggled her two children and the errands she could no longer postpone. It was then that Jinsoo appeared again as if by fate. "I heard you might need some help," he said gently, holding a folder with neatly organized papers. "I thought this might be useful." Aaliyah's eyes widened. "How did you know?" she asked, more astonished than curious. Jinsoo smiled softly, as though he'd always expected her to be overwhelmed. "I've noticed you handle so much on your own. Sometimes it's okay to accept a little help." She wanted to decline. After all, she had been raised to manage her life independently, but there was a sincerity in his tone she couldn't ignore. "Thank you," she whispered. "Really?" The brief interaction felt transformative. She realized that trust wasn't just given, it was earned through consistency, empathy, and respect. Jinsoo's presence was quiet, steady, and never intrusive. He didn't demand anything from her, and yet he seemed to understand her world in ways she had long forgotten others could. Later that afternoon, they met at a small cafe. Over cups of tea, they talked about mundane things at first: the weather, local news, and her children's school activities. Gradually, the conversation deepened. Aaliyah shared the challenges she faced as a single mom, the exhaustion that often left her feeling invisible, and the lingering scars her husband's words had left on her self-esteem. Jinsoo listened attentively, nodding without judgment. "You've carried so much," he said finally, his voice soft. "And yet you're still standing. That strength most people can't even imagine." Aaliyah felt her chest tighten, a mix of gratitude and relief washing over her. For so long she had been drowning in doubt, fearing that her worth had diminished. Yet here was someone who recognized her resilience, someone whose acknowledgement didn't carry expectation, only understanding. As they prepared to leave the cafe, Jinsoo offered a small, reassuring gesture. He held out his hand for a hug, not fleeting, not hurried. It was long enough for Aaliyah to feel the warmth of his presence, the reassurance that she wasn't alone. Her children waved from nearby, and he gave them a polite nod, making the moment safe and comforting for all of them. Walking home, Aaliyah felt a subtle shift within herself. Trust, she realized, didn't arrive in grand gestures or sweeping declarations. It arrived quietly in moments like this, consistent, kind, and honest. And for the first time in months, she felt as though someone could be in her life not to change her, but to see her for who she truly was. That night, as she tucked her children into bed, she reflected on Jinsoo's presence. A small part of her heart, once battered and bruised, felt lighter. She didn't know where this connection might lead, but for now she was content to simply trust that some people enter your life to remind you of your strength, and maybe, just maybe, to help you see your own beauty again. Aaliyah had always been cautious about letting people in. Life had a way of testing her heart, and after her husband's cruel words, she felt the walls around her emotions grow taller, thicker, and more impenetrable. Yet, when Jinsoo appeared in her life, it was not with grand gestures or overwhelming attention. It was quiet, steady, patient, and that made her defenses feel both necessary and unnecessary at the same time. It began on a rainy afternoon. Aaliyah was waiting at the community library, trying to finish a grant application that could help her start a small business. Her kids were occupied in the children's section, laughing despite the drizzle outside. She was so focused on her work that she didn't notice Jinsoo entering until he was quietly sliding into the chair across from her. "You look deep in thought," he said gently, nodding toward her papers. "Everything okay?" Aaliyah hesitated. Talking about her struggles had never come easily, but there was something about the calm in his eyes that invited honesty rather than judgment. She sighed, pushing the papers aside. "It's a lot," she admitted. "Balancing everything, kids, work, bills, it sometimes feels like I'm drowning." Jinsoo nodded slowly, listening intently. "I can imagine. Carrying so much for others can leave very little space for yourself." She blinked, surprised by the depth of his understanding. Most people would offer advice or pity, but Jinsoo simply acknowledged her feelings. And for once, Aaliyah allowed herself to relax. I've always been strong," she confessed, her voice low. "But lately I feel like all of that strength isn't enough. And the things my husband said, he made me doubt myself in ways I never imagined." Jinsoo's gaze softened. "Words can hurt more than action sometimes. But your worth isn't defined by anyone's opinion, especially not someone who doesn't see the real you." Aaliyah felt a lump in her throat. No one had ever spoken to her with such empathy, recognizing both her pain and her value simultaneously. She realized she wanted to share more, to let someone see the pieces of herself she usually kept hidden. I'm scared," she admitted quietly. "Scared that I'll always feel this broken, that people will see me the way he did." Jinsoo reached across the table, offering a small but comforting gesture, a hand gently brushing hers. "It's okay to feel scared," he said. "But you're not broken, Aaliyah. You've survived everything life has thrown at you and you've done it with courage. That counts for more than you think." Her eyes welled up and without thinking she leaned slightly toward him. He responded naturally, offering a hug. Not rushed, not forced, just a steady, reassuring embrace that felt safe. The warmth of his presence seeped into her like sunlight after a storm, and for the first time in months she allowed herself to be completely vulnerable. They held that embrace for a long moment, neither speaking, just existing in the quiet understanding between them. When they finally pulled back, Aaliyah felt lighter, as if the weight of her fears had lessened simply because someone had acknowledged them. Walking out of the library, her children chattered happily beside her, unaware of the emotional breakthrough their mother had just experienced. But Aaliyah carried it with her, the knowledge that trust could be gentle, that vulnerability could be safe, and that sometimes the simplest gestures like a hug could carry the weight of 1,000 words. That day she realized that healing didn't have to be loud or dramatic. Sometimes it simply required someone willing to see you, understand you, and hold you when you needed it most. And Jinsoo, without even trying, had shown her that possibility. Aaliyah never thought she would attend a charity event alone. After her husband left, the thought of entering a room full of strangers, dressed in her best yet still feeling invisible, was terrifying. But when Jinsoo offered to accompany her, not as a date but as a friend, she hesitated for only a moment before agreeing. The event was hosted for single parents and local families, filled with laughter, quiet conversations, and the occasional clinking of glasses. Aaliyah felt out of place at first, her hands gripping her clutch tightly as she scanned the room. Her children clung to her side and she took a deep breath, trying to remind herself that she was doing this for them. Then she felt a gentle hand on her shoulder. Jinsoo's presence was calm, grounding. "I've got you," he said softly, giving her a reassuring smile. There was no judgment, no expectation, only support. Throughout the evening, Jinsoo remained at her side, introducing her to organizers and other parents, subtly encouraging her confidence. His attentiveness was quiet, respectful, and steady, like a gentle anchor in the sea of unfamiliar faces. Aaliyah felt herself relaxing, laughter coming more easily than it had in months. At one point, her daughter tugged on her sleeve, eyes wide. "Mama, look, there's a magician." Aaliyah followed her gaze and chuckled, pulling her daughter close as they watched a small magic act. Jinsoo knelt beside them, smiling warmly, making the children feel at ease. The scene felt natural, effortless, like he belonged there just as much as she did. Later, in a quieter corner, Aaliyah and Jinsoo talked about everything and nothing. She shared stories about her childhood, about the dreams she had once held before life's hardships made them feel distant. Jinsoo, in turn, spoke of his own family and the pressures of running a business, but also of the small joys that kept him grounded, like watching the sunrise or enjoying tea with friends. "I never thought someone could make a room like this feel so welcoming," Aaliyah admitted quietly, her voice carrying a mixture of awe and gratitude. Jinsoo tilted his head, thoughtful. "Sometimes it's not the room that matters, it's the people who choose to be there with you. And right now, I'm glad to be here with you." The simplicity of his words, the genuine care behind them, warmed her heart. She realized that friendship didn't have to be loud or demanding. It could be steady, supportive, and deeply meaningful. As the night drew to a close, Jinsoo offered a gesture that had become familiar, a comforting hug. This one lingered a little longer than usual, not romantic but full of warmth and reassurance. Aaliyah felt the kind of safety she hadn't known in years. In that embrace, she sensed trust growing, a quiet understanding that they could rely on each other no matter what challenges came next. Walking home, Aaliyah glanced at her children, then back at Jinsoo. For the first time in a long while, she felt a sense of belonging. Not just in the event, not just in the world, but within herself. Jinsoo's presence reminded her that support, kindness, and friendship could be the foundation of something stronger, a bond that might one day grow into love, or at the very least, unwavering trust. And perhaps, she thought as she watched him help her children with their coats, this was the beginning of a friendship that could change everything. The morning sunlight spilled through the curtains as Aaliyah prepared breakfast for her children. The routine, once mundane and tiring, now felt manageable. She moved with a quiet strength, carrying herself with a resilience she had nearly forgotten she possessed. Yet, there was an unfamiliar flutter in her chest, a gentle anticipation, as she thought about seeing Jinsoo later that day. He had invited her to a local community event, a small gathering for creative workshops, and she wasn't sure why she had accepted so quickly. Perhaps it was the trust she had begun to feel or the comfort of his presence, but she found herself looking forward to spending time with him, not out of obligation but curiosity, and something warmer she didn't want to name yet. When she arrived, Jinsoo was already there, standing beside a table displaying art supplies. His smile was calm, reassuring, exactly as it had been the first day they met. "Good morning," he said simply, holding out his hand to help her with her bag. The gesture was natural, protective without being overbearing. They spent the morning helping her children with painting and crafts. Jinsoo's gentle encouragement made the kids laugh, and even Aaliyah found herself smiling more freely than she had in months. He didn't just observe, he participated, kneeling on the floor to guide tiny hands, quietly praising their efforts. She watched him and felt a warmth settle in her chest. There was something in the way he noticed the small details, her children's creativity, her quiet leadership, the patience she displayed, that made her feel seen. Later, during a quiet moment, Jinsoo led Aaliyah away from the crowded activity room. They stepped outside into the fresh afternoon air, where the sunlight dappled through the trees. For a moment, neither spoke. Aaliyah felt the comforting rhythm of his presence beside her, the kind of presence that made the world feel safer, calmer, brighter. "You know," Jinsoo said softly, "I've been meaning to tell you something." Aaliyah turned to him, curiosity and a slight nervousness in her eyes. "What is it?" "I admire you," he said, his voice steady and sincere. "Not just for what you do every day as a mother but for who you are, your strength, your patience, the way you keep going even when life feels impossible. It's remarkable." Her chest tightened. She had been struggling to see herself in that light, to feel worthy of admiration or respect. And yet, here was someone she trusted, offering exactly that. Her lips trembled as a soft smile formed. "Thank you," she whispered. I don't know what to say." "You don't have to say anything," he replied gently. "I just wanted you to know that someone sees you. Really sees you." The words, simple yet profound, broke through the lingering doubts she had carried for months. She felt the familiar pull toward him, not in a rush of romance but a quiet, undeniable attraction rooted in trust and respect. Before she could overthink it, she allowed herself to step closer, and he instinctively opened his arms in a warm hug. It wasn't a hug of romance, it was a hug of acknowledgement, admiration, and deep connection. Aaliyah rested her head lightly against his shoulder, feeling safe, valued, and understood. Jinsoo held her gently, neither lingering too long nor letting go too soon, letting the moment convey what words could not. When they finally parted, Aaliyah felt a lightness in her heart she hadn't experienced in months. There was a new layer to their relationship now, admiration, mutual respect, and a budding awareness that their bond could grow into something more. As they returned to the children's laughter and the colorful chaos of the workshop, Aaliyah realized that sometimes love begins quietly, not with fireworks or dramatic confessions, but with simple, heartfelt acknowledgement and the reassurance that someone sees the real you. Life, as Aaliyah had learned, rarely gave a moment's peace. Just as she began to feel steady again, her ex-husband appeared unexpectedly one afternoon. Standing at the doorway of her apartment, he carried an air of regret, his eyes soft but awkward. "Aaliyah, I made a mistake," he said, voice trembling slightly. "I was wrong. Can we try again?" Her heart tightened, a mix of anger, disbelief, and old wounds resurfacing. She had worked so hard to reclaim her life, to find stability for herself and her children, and now he had the audacity to walk back in, expecting forgiveness. Aaliyah felt the old insecurities creeping back, the doubts, the fear of being inadequate. It was in that moment, as she struggled to process her emotions, that Jinsoo arrived. Calm, composed, and aware of the tension in the room, he stepped beside her without saying a word. His presence alone felt grounding, a reminder that she didn't have to face her past alone. "Are you okay?" he asked quietly, his gaze meeting hers with genuine concern. I don't know," she admitted, her voice soft. She glanced at her children, who looked up at her with trust and uncertainty. "He says he wants another chance, but I can't just forget what he said." Jinsoo nodded, as though he understood exactly the weight of her words. "You don't have to forgive him," he said gently. "Not today, not ever if you're not ready. Your worth isn't tied to his approval. You've already proven your strength by standing here, taking care of your children, and rebuilding your life." The reassurance in his voice steadied her. She had almost forgotten that strength could be recognized, not just endured. And in that recognition she found clarity. She didn't need to chase validation from someone who had hurt her. As her ex-husband continued to plead, Aaliyah took a deep breath, her voice firmer now. "I've moved on," she said. "I'm done letting your words define me. Please leave." Her ex-husband's shoulders slumped, and he left, muttering apologies that felt hollow to her ears. Aaliyah's chest ached, not from sadness, but from the release of years of pain and the courage it took to assert herself. Before the emotions could overwhelm her, Jinsoo stepped closer. Without a word, he opened his arms, offering a hug that was both comforting and protective. Aaliyah leaned into it, letting herself feel the warmth and steady reassurance that had become his signature presence in her life. "It's okay," he whispered softly. "You don't have to carry any of this alone. You're not just surviving, you're thriving. And I see that every day." The hug lingered, a gentle reminder that she wasn't defined by her past. She felt her heart lift, the weight of shame and doubt melting in the safety of his embrace. For the first time that day she truly felt seen, not as someone broken but as a woman who had weathered storms and come out stronger. Walking back into her apartment, her children in tow, Aaliyah felt an unfamiliar sense of peace. She realized that obstacles would always appear, that life was unpredictable and sometimes cruel. But she also understood that support, kindness, and genuine care could be found in unexpected places. And for Aaliyah, Jinsoo had become that unwavering presence. A reminder that even when life tries to knock you down, there are people who will stand by you, see your worth, and hold you up when you need it most. The weekend arrived, bringing with it a rare sense of freedom for Aaliyah and her children. She had planned a simple day at the park, sandcastles, laughter, and fresh air, but she hadn't expected that Jinsoo would ask to join them. She hesitated at first, unsure how to navigate the presence of someone who had gradually become so important to her, yet she ultimately said yes. The park was alive with the sounds of children playing, dogs barking, and the soft rustle of trees in the wind. Jinsoo arrived punctually, carrying snacks and a small frisbee for her children. There was a quiet ease to him, a gentle way of engaging without overwhelming, that immediately put everyone at ease. "Ready to get started?" he asked, smiling warmly. Her children cheered, and Aaliyah felt a flicker of gratitude. Jinsoo wasn't just present. He participated fully, laughing when Malik stumbled while throwing the frisbee and crouching to encourage her daughter when she tried to climb the jungle gym. His patience and attentiveness weren't the kind of superficial charm one often encountered. They were authentic, steady, and deeply reassuring. As the afternoon unfolded, Aaliyah watched him interact with her children, and a soft, unexpected feeling stirred in her chest. There was a gentleness in his eyes, a quiet admiration that seemed to go beyond mere friendship. And yet, it wasn't in the way anyone would rush to label it. It was in the little things. The way he offered her daughter a hand without drawing attention, the way he encouraged Malik without criticism, the small gestures that whispered, "I care about all of you." During a quiet moment, when her children ran off to chase a butterfly, Jinsoo leaned against the bench beside her. "You know," he said softly, "seeing you with them, it's beautiful. You're patient, kind, and strong. They're lucky to have you and I feel lucky to know you. Aaliyah felt her breath catch. His words weren't declarations of love, but they were honest, vulnerable, and heartfelt. Something in her stirred, an awareness that she wasn't just safe with him, she was seen, appreciated, and even admired in ways that transcended friendship. Thank you, she whispered, unsure how to express the mixture of gratitude and warmth blooming inside her. He didn't rush her for more. Instead, he reached over and offered a gentle hug, a hug that carried admiration, comfort, and the kind of care that made her feel both safe and cherished. She leaned into it, feeling a quiet joy in the simplicity of human connection. It wasn't romantic in the overt sense, but the intimacy of understanding, trust, and shared moments was undeniable. As the sun dipped low in the sky, painting the park with warm golden light, Aaliyah realized something important. She had spent so long fearing judgment, doubting herself, and seeking validation in the wrong places. And yet here, in the presence of Jinsoo, she felt seen for the first time in years. Her heart felt lighter, her mind calmer, and a new awareness settled in. This feeling, this quiet warmth, could be the start of something deeper. When her children ran back, laughing and calling for snacks, Jinsoo gave them his full attention, and Aaliyah smiled, watching him with a heart that had begun to recognize the tender stirrings of love. Not a love of grand declarations or dramatic gestures, but a love built on trust, respect, and unwavering support. One that might grow slowly but surely into something lasting. That day, amidst laughter, playful shouts, and warm hugs, Aaliyah realized that her heart had begun to open again, not just to life but to Jinsoo, the man who had quietly become her anchor. It had been a week of small, perfect moments, morning coffees, shared walks with the children, quiet afternoons at the library, but life has always had a way of introducing challenges when least expected. Aaliyah found herself unusually quiet that evening, her thoughts tangled and restless. She had misunderstood something Jinsoo said earlier, interpreting his words as criticism when he had only been offering advice. The moment it happened, she felt a familiar sting of self-doubt rise inside her, whispering that perhaps she was reading too much into things, or that she was too sensitive. Jinsoo, on the other hand, noticed her distance immediately. He had learned the subtle cues, the way her eyes avoided his, the tightening of her shoulders, the soft exhale that betrayed lingering worry. He didn't press right away, knowing that patience had often done more for them than insistence ever could. Finally, Aaliyah broke the silence. I think I misunderstood what you said earlier, she admitted, her voice tight. It felt like you were criticizing me, but maybe that wasn't what you meant. Jinsoo's expression softened. I'm glad you told me, he said gently. That wasn't my intention at all. I respect you, Aaliyah, and I never want you to feel criticized or undervalued by me. The words, calm and sincere, began to untangle the knot of tension in her chest. She felt the relief that only comes from honest communication, the kind that builds understanding rather than leaving doubts to fester. I guess I've been carrying so much, she confessed, her voice softening. Sometimes even small things feel like bigger judgments than they are. Jinsoo nodded knowingly. I understand. And I want you to know that I'm here with you, not against you. We can always talk. Always work through misunderstandings. That's what matters. Aaliyah looked at him, her heart swelling with gratitude and trust. For the first time she realized that love, or at least the foundation of it, wasn't just about romance or fleeting gestures. It was about patience, respect, and the willingness to meet each other halfway even when things felt complicated. Before words could falter, Jinsoo offered a familiar, reassuring hug. It was longer this time, full of silent reassurance, forgiveness, and emotional intimacy. She rested her head lightly against his shoulder, letting go of the tension that had clung to her since the misunderstanding. The hug spoke volumes. I see you. I understand you. I am here for you. When they finally pulled back, Aaliyah's eyes glistened and Jinsoo gave a small, supportive smile. Thank you, she whispered. For everything. For being patient, for understanding, for just being you. He shook his head gently, brushing a strand of hair from her face. No, thank you. You've shown me what it means to trust, even when it's hard. That takes courage, and I admire that in you. The tension of the evening dissolved into quiet comfort. Aaliyah felt lighter, more connected, more certain of the bond that had grown between them. She realized that relationships weren't perfect and misunderstandings were inevitable, but with patience, honesty, and care, they could emerge stronger than before. As the night settled and her children slept peacefully, Aaliyah reflected on the day. Small conflicts would always arise, she knew, but the love and trust she shared with Jinsoo had proven resilient. Their journey was no longer just about kindness or support, it was about building a foundation that could withstand life's uncertainties. And in that realization, Aaliyah allowed herself to hope, not just for tomorrow, but for a future with someone who truly saw her, valued her, and would stand by her through everything. The morning sun cast a golden glow across the Johnson apartment, reflecting the warmth and calm that had slowly returned to Aaliyah's life. Over the past months, she had rebuilt herself from heartbreak, rediscovered her strength, and learned to embrace her worth, both as a mother and as a woman deserving of love. But today felt different. There was a quiet anticipation in the air, a sense that life was about to shift in a way she hadn't dared to imagine. Jinsoo arrived that afternoon, carrying a bouquet of her favorite flowers and a small picnic basket filled with treats for the children. His presence, calm and familiar, filled the space with comfort and excitement. The children ran to him instantly, laughing and hugging his legs, and Aaliyah felt a soft ache of gratitude. He had become more than a friend or supporter, he had become part of their little family. They spent the afternoon in the park, building sandcastles and flying kites, laughter blending with the gentle breeze. Jinsoo's attention was gentle but unwavering, guiding her children with care and encouragement, yet always finding moments to connect with Aaliyah. She watched him, heart swelling, realizing how deeply he had embedded himself into their lives, not forcefully but effortlessly, with patience and kindness. As the sun began to set, painting the sky with pink and gold, Jinsoo took Aaliyah's hand. "There's something I want to ask you," he said softly, his eyes reflecting the fading sunlight. Her heart skipped a beat, and the children paused, sensing the significance of the moment. Aaliyah looked at him, a mixture of curiosity, hope, and quiet joy filling her chest. "What is it?" she whispered. Jinsoo knelt down, gently holding her hands in his. "Aaliyah, you've shown me courage, kindness, and a heart full of love. You've rebuilt your life with strength I admire every day. I don't want to imagine my life without you and your wonderful children in it. Will you let me be part of your family, forever?" Tears sprang to Aaliyah's eyes, a mixture of disbelief, relief, and overwhelming happiness. She thought of all the moments she had endured, the heartbreak, the self-doubt, the fear, and realized that every step had led her here, to a love she didn't just deserve, but that had been patient enough to grow gently alongside her. "Yes," she whispered, her voice trembling with joy. "Yes, Jinsoo. We want this too." He rose and they embraced, long, heartfelt, and unspoken, a hug that carried all the months of trust, support, and growing love. Their children joined in, wrapping their small arms around both of them, and in that moment, Aaliyah felt a profound sense of completion. She was no longer defined by the cruel words of the past. She was seen, cherished, and fully loved. The evening ended with a quiet walk home, the sky darkening with stars, their hearts light and intertwined. Aaliyah held Jinsoo's hand, feeling the warmth and certainty of his presence. She knew that life would continue to bring challenges, but for the first time she felt completely secure in the knowledge that they would face them together, as a family, as partners, and as two people who had found in each other something rare and enduring. That night, as the children slept, Aaliyah reflected on her journey. She had survived heartbreak, reclaimed her confidence, and found love that was patient, kind, and unwavering. With Jinsoo by her side, she finally understood that true beauty wasn't defined by others' words. It was resilience, kindness, and the courage to let someone see your heart. And as they hugged once more before bedtime, she knew this was only the beginning. Forever had finally found them.